What's up guys, it's Punchy, and today's update is a very big one. So, both the new content and balancing from our Deepwoken weekly patch are honestly game changing, and let's check it out. First off, we have received a new Galebreath Sidegrade, the Haunted Path Spectre. With this base path, it says build up spectral energy by performing successful dodges. Phantom winds from Haunted Gale, basically the ghosts, they no longer appear, and all suffocation effects are exchanged with the winded status. For those unaware, the winded status forces the target to swing 15% slower with their weapon, and this should be in place instead of all forms of suffocation, which lock you out of mantras. As we can see in game, we actually have a meter called the spectral gauge, and this gauge fills up as we successfully dodge attacks and hit players with our Gale mantras. Using this meter, we can do some very special things that I'll cover in a second. The new apparition talent says instead of having Haunted Gale phantoms, we have a larger apparition ghost that flies out and applies the winded status. These apparitions can be parried, but not inside of our path mode, which I'll get to. But anyway, here are the phantoms. They do look very cool, and it's a whole new model. Improving our apparition ghosts with the possession talent, dodging an attack with 50% spectral gauge will send a ghost to our opponent. This is very strong because they do damage scaling off of your Gale, and they actually win the target, but you're rewarded for dodging, which is very free. You're filling up your bar by playing defensively, and you can also retaliate by being defensive. I don't really get it. Moving on, if we reach at least 20% of our spectral gauge, we can enter Phantom Step. So pressing X allows the user to gain a speed boost mode and turns all dashes into a Gale dash. This is unbelievably strong, but as mentioned earlier, inside of this mode, all apparitions or ghosts become unparryable when we're faster, and it's kind of insane. Now, the final ability of this Gale Path, if we did not have enough mobility, is a teleportation move. Using the talent Vanishing Wraith, your aerial attacks will now TP you behind your targets if you're inside of Phantom Step. With a TP, you drain around 1/6 of your bar, and yeah, it's pretty decent. That's about it for the Haunted Gale Spectre path, and I think it will be devastatingly powerful for Galebreath users. Moving on, we actually have a Gale mantra that I think is very strong. So Windforge, a delayed pressure tool, allows the user to target players automatically and catch running enemies. It doesn't really do much damage, almost at all, but it lets Gale users prepare the next attack while Windforge is active, or it keeps their enemy from reacting. It's a fairly good application for wind and gives them another mix-up, another mobility tool, and another catching option, which will most likely be busted with this new path. This update, we have also received 2 new sparks, both for the Electrocarve mantra. This Thundercall mantra is already very solid with its improved base, but now we have more options. The Electrocarve Blast Spark turns your radius into a giant sphere, increasing your AoE while decreasing the damage it does. The Magnet Spark Carve turns your carve into a thrown projectile, sticking onto nearby players, eventually exploding and stunning them with a similar effect. Both of these options seem very fun and powerful for dealing with enemy groups. Alongside this update, assassinations as a whole have been touched and reworked entirely. So before this update, assassination itself did little damage, ragdolling the player and keeping them stunned, where most of the damage came from your actions after you stunned them. Players could hit their targets with damage multipliers, everything, and it was super janky and possible to do insane damage. This has been updated to work differently. When doing assassinations, you will be doing a set damage amount of 50% HP always, not affected by any damage multipliers. Now, after you stab them, it kicks them away and makes them immune to damage right after, so this should allow for balanced assassination, and it kinda reminds me of Dark Souls Sekiro backstabs instead of an unreactable kill move cutscene. Let's talk about balancing, because this time we have a lot. I won't cover every single thing about this patch, but I'll stay organized and highlight those I found to be most important. First off, let's talk about Tap Dancer, and this has become base behavior for Deepwoken combat. What this talent does, if you dodge cancel, you can immediately roll again, granting a skilled player essentially 2 dodges. This feature is no longer tied to the Tap Dancer talents because it is now base behavior that anybody can do. If you dodge cancel and dodge again, you will have a slightly longer roll cooldown. Another interesting base combat change is something called M1 buff buffering. So a huge issue in competitive Deepwoken play is M1 macros, clicking your mouse M1s without any delay. I have no personal issues with auto clickers, but the vast capability between those with and without macros is pretty large and noticeable. Anyway, if you click after swinging near the end of your weapon end lag, your M1 will come out with less delay. So again, it's not replicating an auto clicker spamming M1, but it's a little bit better and similar to this effect. Moving on, M1 feint end lag has decreased, which could be huge. So after canceling your weapon's attack, players could not capitalize since the delay between this was so large and people would just sit there. Now after feinting your weapon, you should have more time to hit your target after catching them off guard with a successful feint. Bloodless gem healing scaling from damage has increased, meaning it hopped up from 50% raw damage to 75%. On a successful hit, you should be healing more, but the maximum heal from my bloodless gem has been capped at 15 HP healing in 1 second. This means we heal more, but in a single second we're capped a little bit lower, so for ganks and giant radius moves, it's gonna be nerfed. The final base behavior change I found to be impactful was the change to spitting. So spitting on players by pressing T will reduce your own posture and refill some HP, but now it's been nerfed. Spit posture reduction has been cut in half from 50% of your posture to 25%, and the healing effect has also dropped slightly. Also, you cannot spit on players while you yourself are in iframes for free using Ghost or Dark Rift, and that kinda sucks. Let's move on to enchant balancing. So right off the bat, the deferred damage is no longer a 10% bonus, dropping it from 10% to 7%. It's a shame this happened, but I think it's justified because we don't really need to have an enchant that does extra damage just for free, so it's been toned down and balanced a bit. Speaking on damage, the detonation enchant only gives 1 stack per crit, so no more spamming explosion with rapiers, daggers, anything that multi-hits. Upon this, detonation damage is set, no longer affected by damage multipliers, therefore doing less damage to your enemy in total, and this is huge. Something nice for the wild enchant also happened. AoE damage that links to other targets is 75% of the initial damage. The seer enchant, the option that builds up pen and pierces defense, has also received a baseline increase of plus 5% pen. Even without any seer stacks, at least you have 5% extra pen compared to the other options. Obfuscation now only procs a speed boost on close range attacks, so this sounds strange, but players with guns or long range criticals could take advantage of this enchant and power up with the speed or speed demon bleed to do free damage, but that is no longer the case. The nemesis enchant, placing a beacon and teleporting to it, has now increased in duration, allowing the teleport tag to last for 15 seconds instead of just 9. This is a pretty great buff. The Grim enchant, one of my favorite enchants in the entire game, has also been buffed, so the bonus damage status now lasts for 6 seconds from the original 4, and I love that. This should be good for high damage builds and those who take advantage of stack-based gameplay. Another interesting change was the negative downside to the Curse of Yun Shul. So this weapon is for gamblers just like me, randomly doing extra damage to enemies but sometimes hurting yourself. When this activates, you lose 7% of your entire HP bar instead of just 10, but I didn't realize how much we were losing. Like that's kind of crazy. And the final enchant of focus is the Curse of Unbidden. So Unbidden is that enchant that steals ether on M1s and replace your crit with a lackluster 0 damage counter, and it was very terrible. Luckily this has been saved, making this counter 0 wind up. It has literally no wind up, letting players negate damage and instantly react, similar to prediction, and it might be very solid in 1v1 combat. The next thing I'll talk about has to do with a problematic mantra, which is Ice Lasers. Ice Lasers are a crystal specific mantra that comes out very fast, stun players in place, and is honestly pretty unreactable. The best way to defend against this mantra was straight up tanking a hit from the laser, but this has been changed. The wind up for this mantra has been increased by 0.1 seconds, and this might be enough to react against, this light speed mantra. For balancing and content, there's so much more to take a look at, but that's all I'm going to cover today. Anyway, if you want to see more content like this, make sure to like and subscribe so we can hit 70k subs by the end of the year. Thanks again, it's punchin' time.